Thank you all for joining today. Welcome to another episode of CoinList Chats. Today we have the Mina team with us, and we have Evan, who is the CEO and co-founder of ON Labs, and we have Emre, who is the head of business development at ON Labs. ON Labs is the creators behind the Mina protocol. So, quick disclaimer: the Mina token sale on CoinList is unavailable to people who live in CoinList unsupported jurisdictions, in addition to people who live in the US, China, and Canada. So, yeah, without further ado, we have Evan and Emre today, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Mina protocol, how about its applications and its unique technology that allows it to be the world's lightest blockchain. So, yeah, feel free to take it away, Evan.
Thanks. So let's see. So Spencer said I'm the CEO and co-founder of O of One Labs. And yeah, let me tell you more about Mina. So what is Mina? At its core, it's a protocol that embeds zero knowledge proofs very deeply into the protocol. And that unlocks some things from Mina that aren't possible on other chains. Namely that the blockchain itself is incredibly light. The entire blockchain, because it is a zero knowledge proof, can be checked very quickly and with very low amount of data, just a few kilobytes in a few milliseconds, which is really good for accessing the chain and keeping it decentralized. And it also brings these zero knowledge proof properties to developers so that they can start using zero knowledge proofs in their applications, and through that start bringing things from the internet onto blockchains in a way that is private and safe, through the zero knowledge proofs, and that is verified. So you can actually know the stuff you're working with on chain matches whatever property you want off chain. So I'll get into more of that, but that's like the very top high level. So I mentioned these properties that Mina has, but where do they factor in? So there are these problems with crypto today that this technology has the chance to solve. So today, blockchains are very heavy. It's very expensive for users to access these chains. They're many hundreds of gigabytes. That takes a long time to download. It takes a powerful computer to download. It's sort of a non-starter for the majority of users. It's kind of in this place where if you're someone that has a big server somewhere or is a big company, you can access these things with some work. But if you're a regular user, you can't get access to them. The other kind of thing that happens here is, even at the low throughputs blockchains do today, they're already facing these problems. If you try to increase the throughput, increase the scale, you have one of two options. You have option one, which is we're just going to let the blockchain get crazy big. You can look at like an EOS or a Tron for that, versus a Bitcoin, where you can just like kind of make the throughput really high, but then you're going to have decentralization issues. The other one you can do is to compromise on the permissionless, like trustless access of these chains, which some of the other new projects are doing, which again makes these systems more centralized and more trusted, because you can't access it as a random party that doesn't want to find someone to trust to join the network. So you have this problem where if you have this trilemma really, where if you increase scale and you want to keep security, you're going to lose out on decentralization. Lastly, we have this property that everything that you put on blockchains today is public. Everything, all the computations have to run on chain, all the data has to go on chain. You can't put a proof of anything on chain without going public on it. And that works for some applications, but for the majority of things that start to want to use real world data, start to want to interact with existing financial data, existing user data, as bad as the internet is today, it's just a non-starter to put those on chain, because there's really no good way to get privacy and verifiability with crypto today. So like I mentioned, Mina embeds zero knowledge proofs very deeply into the protocol, and that gives a route to solving these problems. So the first is that Mina is like extremely light. Each node is only a few kilobytes to be a full node, because the zero knowledge proof effectively stands in, and I'll explain how this works, for the entire blockchain. The zero knowledge proof makes it possible to have a secure proof of everything in the chain with only these few kilobytes. We've designed the consensus to be possible to have unlimited number of consensus participation. So there's no cap on the number of validators. Instead of having, at most, like, the most extreme example is like it would be EOS with 20, but in other BFT networks, like maybe a few hundred, there is no cap on the number of validators in Mina. During our testnets, we've brought on hundreds of block producers that are currently actually running the chain right now. And there's kind of no cap on how far that can go. We can keep getting this thing more and more decentralized as more users join in at the consensus layer. Lastly, giving developers this power of zero knowledge proofs means that they can start accessing some of the features of zero knowledge proofs as part of the applications they build. Namely, they can start accessing privacy through their applications on chain. And because of the ability of these proofs to verify data on HTTPS websites, they can also start bringing in data from the internet for off-chain data sources. So we can start bringing data in, and we can also start making it private when it gets on chain. So we can think about extending things like DeFi to include existing private financial data, for example, which we think, and we're starting to see, is like a big help for applications that are trying to scale out to real world uses on top of these existing kind of technical breakthroughs in DeFi and elsewhere. So like I said, I'll mention how this actually works. So we have this little proof, but what is actually going on? So in Mina, the entire blockchain is just a few kilobytes. It's just the zero knowledge proof. And that's because the zero knowledge proof stands in for the whole chain. And this makes it so anyone with a smartphone or a browser will be able to just download this little proof and verify the network very quickly. In normal blockchains, the way this works is you download all of the history of the chain to know that the current state you're looking at is correct. You have to do this for a couple of reasons. You have to do this to know that the consensus is correct. You have to do this to download all the proof of work information in proof of work. For proof of stake, you have to download all the consensus information for proof of stake. You have to check that everything up to now is correct, because otherwise you don't have a link between the genesis and the current state. Someone could just be forging some random nonsense. Additionally, you have to show that actually all of the transactions are correct and that you actually have reached a valid state. Otherwise, someone could also just be tricking you, showing you a random state of the system that was never reflected by real proofs. They've just, changed people's balances around. They've messed with the application state. You need a proof of the current application state, of the current consensus information, to be able to download these platforms safely. Otherwise, anyone can just fool you, and the whole property of like this trustless consensus from Genesis is broken. So the trick with Mina is that the zero knowledge proof captures that blockchain state. That instead of having to download the blockchain and check all these transitions, what you do is download a zero knowledge proof that effectively attests to the exact same computation. Every time a new block is added to Mina, the zero knowledge proof of the previous chain is appended and recursively updated with the new block you're adding. And so we have these recursive proofs going backward that effectively prove that every transition since Genesis has followed correct consensus information, and all the transactions are correct, and you can trust what the current state says, that it's backed by real signed transactions. And between both of those, you get all the properties you usually get from downloading this big blockchain and checking it, except that now you get it with just the zero knowledge proof, which again is like very small and very lightweight to check. And what this required was basically writing the whole protocol inside of a zero knowledge proof, inside of a recursive zero knowledge proof, which made it possible to have these properties. And that brings us back to these benefits. We're in a place with Mina now where the blockchain itself is extremely light. You can get access to the zero knowledge proof and get full node access that is completely trustless from phones and browsers. There's no like intermediary in the middle here. You just connect to the network and you get it. We're also in a place where every node in Mina is a full node. It's not a situation where you have like kind of varying degrees of trust depending on what kind of node you're running. You have to think like, oh, like I'm running a light node, like that means I get these properties, but not these properties. Is that safe for me? Every node in Mina is a full node. They're verifying everything since Genesis. A very powerful property. You like avoid this whole question of like, are the economic incentives correct. It's just you get a full security proof that everything is correct, which is great for security and really good for decentralization because there really isn't different classes of nodes, like everyone's like first class. And lastly, we bring up these zero knowledge proofs all the way up to users so that they can start building applications that use these snarks, that can use off-chain data from the internet, like I mentioned, and bring it on-chain in a public way if it's something like a price feed data where everyone just wants to see it, or in a private way if it's something like I'll mention later in the talk, like a credit score that you want to bring on-chain privately, someone's identity you want to bring on-chain privately, all someone's social media information you want to bring on-chain privately, but you still want to prove something to on-chain because you want to interact with it. We can now do that with snaps. So that's a little bit of like the protocol architectural background. So this kind of brings me to what are like the next steps here. So I'm going to like give a preview of where we're at with what I think are two of the most important things for Mina. One is what is like the product vision? Like what are we actually going to do with this thing? I've hinted at it with snaps, but let's talk more about that. And the other half is community, which has been like a big focus for us. And we think that, you know, the protocol at the end of the day is only as good as its community. And it's at the end of the day also not really even our project, it's our project and we have to build it together. So starting with project vision on that. So the place where we see snaps adding the most value immediately is in this kind of idea of a private gateway to the real world. And there's a very immediate kind of use case here, which is other blockchains have a lot of difficulty interacting with off-chain data, both because verifying that data and bringing it on-chain is expensive and hard to do, and hard to do if you don't have the ability for zero knowledge proofs to go verify that data, and also because you need some ability for having privacy on-chain, like I mentioned. It's nice if someone can put someone's identity with their social security number on chain, but maybe we don't want that information to be public, and zero knowledge proofs can provide a way to do that. And this is powered by snaps. So the key here is the two things I mentioned. One being you can take HTTPS and you can import verified real world data from HTTPS from any website for use on chain. And what's especially cool about this is you don't need to have a particular partnership with any website. You don't need to have like we made a trusted oracle for New York Times headlines. It's just works generically over all HTTPS websites. So imagine if you're a developer in this situation, you no longer have the challenge of going out and like forming partnerships with everyone you want to use. You're just free to like hack and program on this stuff and just do it all permissionlessly, which I think is going to be really awesome. The second is that when as a developer, when you write an application, you can make it possible for your dApps, or in our case, snaps, to be activated by information that is proven, that you don't put the information directly on chain, you put a proof of that data on chain. And we'll see an example of that later with credit scores with a partnership where that's currently what we're doing. So to dive a little bit more into this, there's kind of like three use cases we're kind of imagining right now on top of this. One is just kind of like generally private access to internet services. I think this is particularly interesting in the realm of like DeFi and finance. Maybe you want to prove that you did a particular Venmo transaction to someone, so something would happen on chain that they've like said, hey, like if you send me a Venmo transaction, I'll like send you something on chain. You could build that sort of thing with having this like private access to internet services without revealing any of the personal information behind that. This is for credit scores, for identity, for financial transactions, for prediction markets, for just putting social information on chain. Really like anything that's on the internet can move on chain this way. The way this whole thing works is these permissionless web oracles I mentioned that again don't need any partnerships or anything. They just pull real world data on from any website without needing the website's permission because of this features of snaps to verify things off chain, and some other crypto magic that the team has been building that we have some information out on that if you really want to read the details, we can have more out on soon, and can bring privacy as well along with that. We're also imagining this can be used to kind of just improve crypto UX in general, and start going back to the regular internet and providing better UX there as well. So we can imagine having basically like a single sign-on, like what you do with Google these days. You're like, oh, I'm going to sign on my Google account, but having that work through a Mina account for privacy. And that doesn't necessarily mean that to use this, you'll have to, memorize a private key or whatever to do this. Instead, what we can do is have a snap where you prove that you have access to an email address without revealing what the email address is. So as a user, this would give you like the same flow as you do now to like sign on to websites, except that everything would be private for how you actually log in. The website would just end up seeing a public key. And in addition, you can imagine using this for like a MetaMask replacement that doesn't make you like memorize a whole list of seed words at the beginning that like you can never forget. Instead, what it does is you just can sign in with your email, but no one sees what that email is. It's all private, and you can start using crypto apps even as if they're regular apps, which I think also could be really exciting. So where we're at right now with this is we have a partnership with Teller Finance to use snaps in DeFi with this example I've mentioned a couple of times. Teller has built a snap on Mina, which privately proves that a user has a credit score greater than 700. So how this works, user goes on their local device, they run an application that's like open source, they could like check if they want to. And locally, they sign into Credit Karma, and locally, they generate a zero knowledge proof that their credit score on Credit Karma is greater than 700. Now, they've done all this locally, right? So they haven't revealed any information. Well, what they've produced is this proof that says, hey, like, I'm a person, I have a credit score greater than 700. Great. And then you send this proof over the chain to Teller's app, which then says, great, I've seen a proof now that their credit score is greater than 700. I'm going to like give them an uncollateralized loan with better terms. And if we think about the separation of data here, Teller never had to take hold of all the sensitive information. It doesn't have to look at someone's credit score or like, social security number, all the sensitive information that is not just something that like users care about these days increasingly because of privacy, but it's also a liability to a company like Teller. Clearly, like, we don't even want to put it on chain, but this way, Teller doesn't even have to think about looking at this sensitive information. It's a great way to start in a lightweight way onboarding all this really important information into their app and into their ecosystem without taking on the risks to it, and while being able to hold to values of caring about users' privacy, which is really important. So this is kind of just the beginning. We have with snaps this composable smart contract setup that have snarks. There's no trusted setup as part of that. It's just like, snaps as dApps, but with snarks built into it. And we're imagining that just beyond Teller, like this can be expanded in general to put like a whole new kind of set of things into dApps and DeFi. So for example, I was reading recently about like the Oracle problem about how like you have all these oracles that are currently securing a lot of DeFi, but there's like a huge risk there because if any of these break, like DeFi is going to like be in huge trouble. With something like this, what we can do is we can remove the Oracle problem and have a secure way of getting information on chain, which will make it so that you can remove a lot of risk by using Mina instead of these other Oracle systems. And that's just like one example, but like it's hard to like kind of explain the extent because like it's like kind of like when Ethereum came out and there were all like these new functionality you could bring on. Like I think the same is true of snarks. And what I'm really excited is we've been able to bring that up to developers as part of snaps. So we just mentioned a few here, like unsecured lending, private identity, verifying like employment, triggering smart contracts based on things that are happening on the internet. Like I mentioned, kind of hinted at earlier, like a New York Times headline shows up, you could have a prediction market that like looks at that somehow. And additionally, I think what's cool is that we can think about doing this bridge to other chains like Ethereum in a way where it doesn't really require everyone to like switch over to like, Mina. It's not like, oh, like move, like, Uniswap or whatever, like move over to Mina. Like it's like a good, better place. That like wouldn't work. There's too much liquidity and momentum there. What we can start doing is start having Mina, like we've done with Teller, plug into these other applications. And as it plugs into these other applications, we can start having Mina have a foothold and adding a lot of value to these ecosystems and starting to get traction that way. So I'm excited about snaps, and as we say, Teller is just the beginning. So lastly, I want to talk about community. So basically, this is more like, I guess, like my philosophy, but I think of crypto as really a structure to enable new types of communities. And I think we've seen that a lot, just like in how crypto's evolved over the last 10 years now, that there's a lot of new possibilities with community with crypto. And one thing that I'm very excited about is we've really built Mina from the ground up to be extremely accessible, to like support a very large number of consensus nodes, to be something that we really want people to get involved with at the technical level. And this like kind of bubbles down to like the community level as well. We have both a very large core community, and thanks to everyone who's like burned out the project. Like we've also gotten a large other community as well, like generally. And we have right now, we're in this place where we have like a very large network of block producers. We have a very large network of people that are technical, that are building tools on top of the protocol. Let me mention some of those. And I'm very excited for the possibility of expanding that going forward, of really taking advantage of the technical architecture that Mina brings to the table, and expanding what is possible with a crypto community on this like strong decentralized crypto foundation. So yeah. So here's what basically the main players in Mina look like right now. We have O of O Labs, which, as I mentioned, I'm like one of the co-founders of, and we've been like the creator and main contributor to Mina for the past 4 years, actually, especially if we count like me and Isaac's original like hacking in our living rooms. And we've been incubating the protocol, but now that it's released, we're just being one of many players on it. The next is the Mina Foundation, which is this independent nonprofit steward of the protocol. I'll say a little more about that on the next slide. But that like is going to take over all like the community marketing infrastructure, like kind of all the coordination efforts of like coordinating this huge community that like is like going to be democratic, but like the foundation is going to like be like the support infrastructure to help everyone do like the things they need, like marketing and community and etc. And lastly, we have like the Genesis community, which is these like many of practice block producers. We had thousands on our test nets that were helping secure the network. And at mainnet, we have 663 that are actively producing blocks and helping secure the network. These are like folks that are very technical and have been with us since like our early days. So like if anyone's out there, like thank you so much. Like couldn't have done it without you. And lastly, we just have like a whole bunch of partners that are helping do this thing, that have like partnered with the project to help make all the stuff that I've been talking about, all the stuff we will do possible. I won't read all the names here, but there's like a ton. And yeah, the Mina Foundation board I want to briefly mention because I'm very excited about it. It's I'm really like thankful that we got such a, I think like a pretty ideal board in my mind for this. Like we have Jill Carlson, who is like someone that I met early on in my crypto days, and like just like brilliant at the space, and has been like an awesome advisor. And now I'm so glad that she's been able to move on to the board. Bunch of things she's done. We also have Josh Cincinnati, who like was formerly executive director of the Zcash Foundation and brings a lot of experience about how these projects operate, how foundations operate, and really like has been, and I think will continue to be like a really strong guide on making sure that we're doing the right, making the right decisions here and going the right way, that we're like really like, optimizing what we can do with this foundation. Tess Van Arison, which Tess is like, core developer and VP of engineering for Tendermint, just, technically like super brilliant and strong, and like able to help guide the ecosystem technically as we do start giving out a bunch of grants, and we start thinking about together with the community, how do we like co-create this like technical vision for where Mina goes next. So I'm on the board, as well as we have Sean Ings, who's just kind of like a general like kind of board like expert who like knows how to like manage all the relevant board stuff, and also how to like think through a lot of like the corporate governance side of foundations, which is like more boring, but also a necessary part of like these kinds of entities. So lastly, I just want to mention something on mainnet launch. This is like something that happened like a few weeks ago now. So it's been up for, I want to say we're coming up on a month, which is crazy because it's been working really well, which is awesome. Everything we like hoped for from when we were doing the test nets, so it's been very stable, which is great. We have around 900 active nodes in the network, although like this slide is also a couple weeks old now, so I'm betting the numbers are much, I know some of the numbers are much higher. Like it's not 8,000 snarks anymore. That was like after a week, it's probably more like 50,000 snarks. But anyway, yeah. So what's still true is I think we still have around 92.3% staking participation, which is really awesome. That's really good numbers for like 92.3% of like the stake in the network is staking. So that's like a lot of stake in the network is staking, like really good signal, I think. We're supported by all these Genesis founding members who are producing these blocks, as well as 40 plus infrastructure partners who are helping with everything from like tooling to custody to helping with people delegating if they're not running their own block producers. So just kind of like block explorers, everything in the space right now for infrastructure. The some performance metrics also, like this was I think only like a little after we launched mainnets with 8,000 snarks. I think it is probably more like 40 or 50,000 right now. This is probably, I'm pretty sure more than probably, this probably is the most snarks ever produced in a production system. So that's really exciting. It's definitely the most recursive snarks ever produced in a production system. So that's awesome. And these snarks are what make the blockchain small. They're like the compression kind of technique. We also like are, this is a product of the 92.3%. Like it's very close to kind of like the optimal performance of the network right now. The theoretical maximum performance is like 75% of like opportunities for blocks get a block due to the way like the probability math works out. We're at 71% right now. It probably is related to the 92.3, but I haven't checked it. But anyway, like it's very close to like theoretical maximum, which is also awesome to see. So yeah, if you want to participate in this, like we're at like the CoinList webinar right now. We have a CoinList sale. There's an opportunity to purchase tokens during the upcoming sale. There's like more details on the CoinList page. This first tranche of Mina tokens will become liquid from May 31st. So that's when there will be like a lot of tokens unlocked on chain. And I think the other kind of main ways to participate is like, one is like building snaps. There's like a lot of token grants available if you're interested in helping build like some of the things I mentioned or some of the things I didn't mention, but like you kind of like start imagining. I didn't mention like a whole bunch of stuff, but there's both a lot of specific grants that we mentioned on this page, as well as just like, we think there's a lot of possibility in general. And we think this will happen because, and if we're able to help community and people learn how to use this stuff and start actually building with it. Because I think there's like a lot of good reasons why you might want to do that, because it's like so new and so cool. You can do so many new things with it. We want to help you do that. There's also isn't on here for how to participate, but let's like go to our like Telegram, go to our Discord. Like especially our Discord is like very active and like both like with us and with community, and you can get to know the project a lot better that way, as well as just kind of like be part of like the day-to-day of the community. Like we just did our first upgrade to like the nodes to like, I think it was to improve like one like stability measure yesterday. You can like see the inner workings of how all that goes on if you want to check out our Discord as well. So that's it. Thank you. Now I'm happy to like answer any questions. But yeah, thank you for listening.
Awesome. Thank you for the presentation, Evan. And for audience members, if you have any questions, feel free to toss it in the Q&A box below or directly in the chat. So yeah, I got a few questions as well. We can get started from here. So I guess taking a step back, like what are your backgrounds before getting into crypto, and like how did you kind of end up in this rabbit hole in this industry?
Yeah, I guess for me, I found about crypto actually like super early somehow, like in high school. I was kind of a nerdy kid that was really into programming, and I spent all my time on like the early version of like Less Wrong and like kind of like forums for emulators and like just kind of like random internet websites. And I was also really into programming and just like seeing what was possible in that space. And I learned about crypto, well, Bitcoin at the time, the only one, through that. And I also, I guess like I have to say, like I met my co-founder then as well. Like we went to high school together, and we like spent a lot of our time in high school just kind of like between classes, like in like the library, just like talking about technology and talking about things like Bitcoin. And I think it was really cool to think of at the time, like, no way like put it as eloquently back then in high school, but like it feels like with cryptocurrency you can like spin up a new social reality like with code, and then like if people use it, like you've done it, like people are now using this new institution that wasn't possible before. And you can't just like do that if you're like, oh, like I'm a for-profit company like Facebook, I'm gonna like make like the internet forum of everyone. Like it doesn't work. Like you need to have like this element of trust and social trust built into it, which cryptocurrency can give you. So I thought this possibility of like kind of spinning up a new social reality was like really awesome. and I was like fascinated by it. And it was something like I kind of like me and Izzy actually like spent a lot of like between like spring break, we come back from like college and stuff, like just like checking in on cryptocurrency, be like, oh wow, like there's all these altcoins now, like what is Litecoin, let's go check it out, or like things like that. um and after college, this was like early 2017, Izzy came out to Berkeley to do do a PhD in cryptography. I was living out there, and we both like, like kind of inevitably, I guess, like this seems like whenever we get together, that's what happens. When we talk more about cryptocurrency, and we started, I had done a degree in computer science. Izzy was learning cryptography, and we started thinking less about like, oh, like this is all the cool things in the space. Let's like read the white papers and see like what's going on. We started thinking more like, oh, like these are some things that we've learned that might be cool to start applying. Izzy learned about ZK snarks. I knew a lot about like distributed systems and computer science. We started thinking, let's maybe think about starting to apply some of these things, because there does seem to be a gap right now where this technology can be transformational, but it can't be accessed by everyone. It can't be verified by everyone. Maybe there's a way to solve that with like some of these technologies like ZK snarks. And that was kind of the birth of the project, and how we got like to this place of like this technical foundation, which I think we can then start using to start building this kind of broader possibility of what it could mean for everyone to have access to like this new social truth and social institutions of cryptocurrency in an accessible way. Yes.
Yeah, for for me, it was perhaps more professional and personal. So before crypto, which sounds ages ago, I used to work at Intel and was in charge of some payments technologies there, and that quickly makes you realize how antiquated the entire system is. Whenever you want to make a payment with a credit card or any of the local payment rails in a country. Also, having moved between countries, you quickly get to realize how hard just if you're not squarely within a system designed for you, how hard things get. So that got me interested in crypto, and yeah, I had the chance to spend some time at Ripple in 2015, and then after grad school, I joined Coinbase relatively early on, and there I had the chance to just get involved in a bunch of different product launches, from its custody product to wallet to USDC, and the more I worked with developers, the more I realized that all of these existing systems are so fragile, that they all bank on there being a huge bull market and all of the prices going up, that there has to be a more elegantly designed system. And that's when I came across Coda. Back then we were called Mina, and then had the privilege to join the team.
Awesome. And it sounds like obviously two of you have very strong conviction in the Mina protocol and the team. And like, so what is kind of your ultimate vision for Mina, and like how do you envisage the ecosystem to look like in 5 years and 10 years? And what do you think it takes to get there?
Yeah, I guess like let me briefly say what I think for like the 5 and 10, and then I'll let Emre chime in for as well. For 5, like I feel like the opportunity and what we could do is have Mina be this like layer that gives you privacy and the connection back to the real world, to crypto, so that as you build a dApp, you add on like kind of a snap component where that gives you the privacy and real world information you need to write your dApp. And also as a user, you use whatever extension you're using for crypto has Mina embedded into it. If you're using like a browser, maybe Mina is even embedded into that. And what that gives you is like a full proof of what's happening on chain in like a fully permissionless way, without any kind of branded intermediary at all. You like are just like, oh, like I just like access the chain trustlessly. That's like what I do. Like that's like the way I think it should be, and that's what I think like kind of the opportunity is in the next few years. I want to mention briefly on like the 10-year vision as well, because like I think zero knowledge proofs in general are like kind of a thing that go beyond crypto. And I think you need a cryptocurrency to kind of bring them into the real world. But I think that there's kind of like this bigger notion right now in our society of trust. And zero knowledge proofs are primitives that give you trust in like a lightweight like way. They give you trust in a way that is something that like kind of the regular person with their phone and browser can grapple. You don't need like a team to go check a bunch of things. You don't need like a supercomputer to like run a big computation. No, like zero knowledge proof attests to all the information you care about going into the thing. If you're using like a dApp on chain that says, you know, I only can update this state if like 5 million people all signed the update, you don't have to go ask them for their signatures. Like the snap just like tells you like, oh, like, you know, I have a verified proof that all 5 million people like updated the state of this thing. And that's like a very powerful property. So this might sound like a little crazy, but I kind of imagine zero knowledge proofs embedded into like everything, like every web page, every company, in like this kind of vast network of trust where everyone is interacting with like a trusted way, like not like the internet today where everything's kind of like, you know, Wild West. And this allows us to start trusting each other, start removing like all this fake information going on, like, you know, not that there is that much fake information going on really, but allows us to have real trust that the information we're looking at is real, and can kind of maybe create a more cohesive society where everyone is kind of on the same page about what's true and what's not, because we have this like fundamental trust layer that's been proven again and again to always be correct, because of course it isn't always correct because it's based on cryptography and based on math. Anyway, that's pretty broad, but that's where I think to it like a long time.
Maybe real quick on the practical implications of a lack of such a world. If you look at any blockchain today, right, we're stuck in one of two worlds. One world is, you know, where chains like Bitcoin and Ethereum, they do commit to being at a certain level of decentralization, but that limits their scalability. And there's always this debate and nervousness around, oh, like, can we increase the gas limit, but then miners will take over, and then can we even update the protocol then, etc. So we either have that world, or we have the world of brave new chains where, yes, there's obviously a lot of technical innovation going on, but there's a constant nervousness and push around how can we maximize the number of block producers, because if that doesn't happen, then everything gets centralized, and we eventually lose what makes a blockchain. And I want to emphasize to everyone that despite there being technical innovations with many of the blockchains coming out, ultimately this becomes about an economic relationship between the protocol and block producers and full nodes, where you know, at equilibrium, which is when prices are not going to the moon, or you know, everyone's not getting airdrops or grants from the foundations, how economically viable will it be to run a block producer or a full node? That's one question that is, I think, at the back of you know, many of the core crypto people's minds, and that's also a very nervous vision. But you know, if you fast forward the vision that Evan just went through, which we think we manifested via Mina, then it becomes a much more elegantly designed system that's self-enforcing.
Got it. That makes sense. And what do you think are kind of like the milestones to get to those visions, at least, you know, maybe in the short term and kind of the medium and long term?
Yeah, let me give you a high level. So the first milestone for us was launching mainnet, which was a big one, which we did about a month ago. And as Evan said earlier, it's been working quite well. The next milestone for us will be to enable Snap's tooling such that anyone can develop these you know, very innovative dApps themselves in a self-service way. Right now, for example, the integration we have with Teller Finance, we've been very close as the O1 Labs team to help, because this is such a frontier technology. But in the upcoming months, we will be releasing tooling that makes it possible for anyone to create these applications. And then from there on, once we have enough demand on the protocol, we will start both scaling as well as enabling browser nodes, such that anyone can, you know, just log into their browser and they have a full Mina instance. And from there on, it will be constant optimization, because the one unique thing about Mina is because it's designed from the get-go to always stay at this constant size, any future performance improvements are mostly about engineering optimizations. And it's not like, you know, a from scratch design or something like that that we need to do. They're just engineering resources that need to be put in to optimize certain parameters of the protocol.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And it sounds like, you know, obviously, in order to have these different snaps be built on top of Mina, you know, community support is really important. Kind of what are your plans to attract and expand the community and like improve that user experience?
Yes. So I feel like there's maybe two halves to this question. there's one half which is kind of technical, like what can we do technically to improve the experience for community members? And the other question is kind of more social, like these tools give us the primitives to build new things for community and where we can build, but it doesn't, we need to build social structures to actually make those possible. So let me like give an example for each of those. So one just kind of practical one is that we like already have very low requirements for block producers, like running a node on Mina is something you can bootstrap to in minutes, not hours or days, and is something that you can start producing blocks like reasonably easy. We continue to like lower the hardware requirements for that so that we can have even more people producing blocks. And we also continue to work on ways for people to start accessing this technology from their phones and browsers and everywhere with this like little full node capability. So I think just like that by itself kind of gives the opportunity for more people to engage. Like you don't have to start engaging with these things through some third party bridge. You can start engaging directly. I think that's like a big possible gain to the community. The other half of that though is like the social thing, which like is really about creating the right structures to include people in the project. And this is something that like we've done already through like the Genesis founding member program and plan to continue to do, but also plan to like start co-creating with the community. Like, can we work together to like figure out what the right programs are to bring more people into this thing in terms of like them having tokens, in terms of them contributing? What does that look like? As well as like what, like I'm going to use like kind of a funny word, like what social institutions can we build to also help make that possible on in our community? Like we care a lot about like our community values, and that's like made our community like a less like I don't know if that's the reason why, but that's like helped I think enforce that why we're like I think a less toxic community than a lot of other ones out there. We're a really friendly place to be. And like this is like an example, so like I don't know if this one's going to happen like anytime soon, but like this is like something I'm excited about exploring if we can do is, for example, uh setting quarterly objectives for like the project with the community, where like we all like come together, we're all like, okay, like in a democratic decentralized way, like we're going to like come together and say like, what do we want to all do together on this thing? So kind of like a vision that's less like, oh, like the core team gets together and they're like, oh, like let's do X. It's more just like let's all come together and like do it ourselves. And I think that like kind of like the stepping back version like of this is like I think that we'll all feel a lot more ownership because like we're all really engaged in the process, but also like we'll have more incentives to actually deliver. We will all be like aligned on what we're doing. There will be like a huge opportunity through something like this to like as a community collectively work in the same direction. So again, like that's just like kind of a hint of like the sort of things I'm excited about. But yes, yeah, thanks.
Okay, sounds like there is quite a few audience questions around, what like what does being the lightest blockchain mean, and like why does that matter, and like how does that make a difference for those end users and whatnot?
Yeah, we kind of covered some of this, but basically this enables any user, anyone that's connected to the Mina network to become a full node. And why are full nodes important? Because if you think about using any other blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum, any of the new ones, most of the time you're basically using the chain through an intermediary, such as exchanges or wallets or anyone else. And the issue there is that it kind of beats the purpose of having a blockchain to begin with, because blockchains are supposed to be these trustless, decentralized protocols, right? Such as an email client, for example, that you can use directly. However, all of these other blockchains would require you to download hundreds of gigabytes, if not terabytes of data. For example, one of the Bitcoin core developers does this annual benchmark of how long it takes to connect to the Bitcoin blockchain, and using a $2,000 desktop machine, you need to spend 6 hours, be technically savvy. So there's a lot of issues and hoops to overcome. Whereas the way Mina is designed enables anyone to just open a browser or your smartphone, or even be on another blockchain and be able to connect trustlessly. And this is important because it kind of goes back to the true origins of a blockchain, where it's fully censorship resistant and gives you full trustless access. But even more importantly, it allows for a full decentralization of the protocol, because full nodes also have this job of making sure that the chain that's being propagated around the world is the correct instance, and that block producers are not, running a cartel or whatever. That's why, if you think about it, Bitcoin and Ethereum don't want to increase their transaction throughput, because then it decreases the number of full nodes, and it allows the security profile of the chain to go down. Yeah, so this is like the major structural advantage. There's many other UX related advantages as well, but we would like to rather show those than tell stories about them in the future.
Definitely makes sense. And speaking of like other layer one projects, kind of thinking about in the veins from cooperation and competition, like who would you say are the biggest competitions from a layer one perspective? And what do you think are some other cooperative opportunities with other layer one blockchains?
Yeah, so we actually see, when you look at Mina, as we've been discussing, its design is quite unique. So over the long run, we believe this is advantageous, basically from compared to any other blockchain. So in a way, one can say it's competitive with every other blockchain, but we also don't see the world that way. Obviously, there's tons and tons of amazing applications of technology running on all these other blockchains, and the one thing we want to enable, as Evan went through, is have Mina be this bridge between the real world, like the off-chain world, and the blockchain world. So just as an example, Teller, which is one of the apps that we are integrating with, is running on Ethereum. Their entire logic and asset settlement or value settlement happens on Ethereum. However, they're using Mina as a data privacy layer. In a similar vein, we announced a few months ago with the Ethereum Foundation on having a grant or an RFC for a bridge, a fully trustless bridge between Ethereum and Mina to be developed, such that any Ethereum application can use the benefits of this private data layer. So we basically see Mina providing these benefits to any application running on other chains without requiring these folks to move over their entire logic. However, over the long run, we also believe that Mina's design will reign supreme, and that there will be a natural migration by applications from other chains onto Mina. But likely that's going to take some time, because there's a lot of optimization work that needs to be done.
That definitely makes sense. And speaking of bringing real world information onto the blockchain and stuff, DeFi obviously been a hot topic in the space. How else can Mina help power that application? And similarly, NFTs are also super hot in the space right now. Is it possible to build NFTs on top of Mina?
Yeah, so Mina, snaps on Mina are going to be entirely like Turing complete, to use the cliche word, and composable. But that's like, let's say, a phase 2 design for snaps that's going to roll out in about a year. The current snaps design has folks doing computations off chain and committing the proofs of their computations, such as their credit score being over 700 on chain. So the benefits of this for DeFi are immense, in our opinion, because if you think of the current DeFi landscape, let's be honest, it's a bunch of rich crypto people doing trades or getting over collateralized loans. We are yet to touch the real world. No one, or the retail market does not frequently do over collateralized lending in the real world. Everyone is able to get loans or use other sorts of financial services without necessarily having to have a ton of collateral. That is possible because there's a lot of private information about your credit history or your financial profile or otherwise things going on to these financial service providers, which is currently not possible in the public blockchain world because every data is public. You don't want to put your name and last name on a blockchain. You don't want to put your social security number there. You don't want to put your credit score number there. So being able to share data from any website out there in a private manner has huge applications in our mind for the DeFi use cases. NFTs is also interesting. As I mentioned, in the future vision of Snaps, NFTs, as well as any other kind of primitive in the current Ethereum or blockchain world, is possible. Right now, like today, minting an NFT on Mina, that functionality-wise, it's not there. However, again, looking at the Teller example, for example, they are using NFTs in their protocol design. So the way our Mina's private data layer integrates with it, and has implications for NFTs and many other things. And if you think about like a longer term vision, zero knowledge proofs also can enable way crazier things for NFTs. Like one example is today, to prove you own an NFT, you have to show your public address to someone else, right, on Ethereum or another chain. They then can see, this person can then see your entire history of transactions, every other thing you own, basically everything about you on the blockchain. What if you could run a zero knowledge proof that says that you have control over an address or an account that has the ownership of a specific NFT? Then you can prove privately to others that you own an NFT without disclosing your entire blockchain profile. So there's lots of cool benefits there. They'll all take some time, but we're working diligently through some of the important use cases, and we believe DeFi obviously is at the top of that list.
Awesome. And we're a little out of time, so just got two more quick questions. So we talked a little bit about the layer 1 space, then we talked about the application layer, and maybe talk a little bit about the layer 2 space. So since Mina is like so light and like really fast with low transaction fees, do you think there is a need for a layer 2 solution, or does that kind of go away in the case of Mina here?
So it does kind of go away in the case of Mina here. Like these layer 2s often, in fact, use zero knowledge proofs in order to make it possible for them to, in a less elegant but working way to start putting more transactions onto existing chains. Because Mina is a zero knowledge proof in a sense, it doesn't need this. You can, one way to think about it is like, let's say that if we increase the throughput of the Mina chain, those extra transactions don't get added to some historical history that everyone has to download that is going to like weigh down future decentralization. Instead, those transactions kind of just get like recursively put into the zero knowledge proof. And the zero knowledge proof is a constant size. It doesn't get affected by this increased throughput. So until you get to the point at which like you've maximized possible throughput for like the single chain, you don't have to worry about layer 2s. Once we want to go from like, a few hundred TPS to like, infinite arbitrary TPS, that's when it starts getting more interesting. And you have to think about horizontally scaling, but you don't have to think about it at all until you get to like throughputs that already like these chains are not quite doing yet. Yes.
That definitely makes sense. And final question: if people want to learn more about Mina, where should they go? What should they refer to? And do you also have any last words or messages for the audience?
Let's see. I guess like you can find us on our Twitter, Mina Protocol. That's like the main place for us updates. Like I mentioned earlier, our Discord and is like a good place to go for like kind of more like kind of in the weeds, like in the like what's happening of the project. So check that out. Our Telegram is also a good place. I just want to say like also like if you join the project, like we'll be happy to have you in the community. And if you already are part of the project, like we're really looking forward to building more things with you. I think we have a lot of exciting stuff left. Not left, but a lot of exciting stuff that we're going to do, and I'm looking forward to it.
I will also add, Mina is live. Its mainnet is operational, so you can hop on minaprotocol.com, run a node, run a snark worker, and do a bunch of other things. There's a lot of amazing tools developed by the community. And yeah, we're really looking forward to have this chain, get further and further decentralized and used, and really looking forward to get more snaps on the protocol. So thank you all for joining.
Awesome. Thank you all. Yeah, thank you all for joining again. Really appreciate the support here, and thank you for your time, Emre and Evan. So again, this broadcast will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube. We will send out the link to the YouTube recording to everyone who registered for the Mina sale on CoinList soon. So yeah, stay tuned, and thank you all for your time. Thank you. Bye.